The mourning for the Kennedys began in the city of Fort Worth, Texas. The president and his wife spent the night at a local hotel where they were lodged after a busy day of meetings and speeches. Kennedy's visit to Texas was part of a political tour of the southern United States. It had great significance for his candidacy. A year later, the presidential election was coming, and Kennedy sought to gain support among the population, where his position was deplorable. Kennedy's personal charisma played a special role in these speeches. He had a knack for attracting attention and charming the public. Also actively involved was his wife, Jacqueline Kennedy. She was very popular among Americans at that time. Kennedy woke up in his hotel room. A scheduled public meeting was ahead. He received a brief briefing on the security and political situation in Texas. He was reminded that political strife had escalated in Texas and some local leaders were extremely negative toward him. Nevertheless, the president continued his preparations. The morning began with a light rain. It caused concern about the president's future trip around Dallas, as an open limousine was planned. However, it did not affect Kennedy's mood. He was alert and ready for the upcoming speech. A small crowd of locals had gathered in front of the hotel. They wanted to see the president and his wife. The light rain was not a hindrance, and the mood was festive. The important point was that this was the first visit of John and Jacqueline Kennedy to Fort Worth, so their arrival caused great excitement among the local population. The presidential motorcade was ready to leave, but before it did, Kennedy decided to personally greet the crowd. He left the hotel without an umbrella. This decision played to his image. Kennedy always wanted to be close to the people. His wife was next to him. She wore a pink Chanel suit, which would come to symbolize the tragedy. Kennedy gave a short speech to local residents. He thanked the city for the warm welcome and expressed optimism about his election program. The president spoke about the future of America and the importance of support from every citizen. His wife, who was known for her reticence at political events, seemed open and friendly this time. The atmosphere was festive despite the early hour and a light rain. After the meeting, Kennedy returned to the hotel for breakfast and preparations for his flight to Dallas. Here he had time to meet with several local leaders and discuss the details of his visit to the city. There was a feeling among all present that this day would be an important step for his political career. Later, Kennedy and his wife headed for the Fort Worth airport. The president's motorcade arrived at the airport. His wife and Vice President Lyndon Johnson and his wife were aboard the plane after it landed. The flight from Fort Worth to Dallas was only supposed to take 13 minutes. During the flight, the president joked with his team and discussed details of the upcoming speech. However, he was concerned about the tension in the state. He knew there was a lot of political strife in Texas, and not all leaders were on his side. This was especially true in the conservative communities who criticized his domestic and foreign policies, affecting civil rights and relations with the Soviet Union. During the flight, the weather improved. The rain that had been falling in the morning stopped and the sky began to clear. This change in weather conditions proved to be fatal. The organizers decided that the limousine that would take the president through the streets of Dallas would be open. The trip was an opportunity for him to demonstrate his openness to the people, and thus increase his ratings. The plane landed safely at Love Field Airport. As soon as the presidential plane came to a stop, a crowd of local residents gathered around it. Many of them held placards and flowers, showing their support. Kennedy, along with his wife, got off the plane. They slowed down to greet people and express their gratitude. By this time, the president was in high spirits and his wife continued to exude a positive attitude despite some security concerns. Among those supporting the president were officials, including Texas Governor John Connally and his wife Nellie. They were to accompany the president on the trip. Connally was an important political figure, and his support had a big impact for Kennedy's visit. The motorcade was ready to leave for downtown Dallas. Kennedy and his wife got into the Lincoln Continental. Their escort consisted of several cars. First rode the police, then came the presidential car, followed by security personnel. The motorcade left the airport. Next to Kennedy in the back seat sat his wife Jacqueline, and in the front were Governor Connally and his wife Nellie. Police motorcyclists escorted the motorcade on the sides. They kept order on the road and secured the route. Thousands of people lined the streets, who, hearing of the president's visit, came out to catch a glimpse of him. The motorcade began to move through the main streets of the city. The number of people grew larger and larger. The public reacted to the president with enthusiasm. He smiled broadly, often turned to the people and waved. Jacqueline, who was sitting on the side, also smiled and greeted the citizens. The motorcade route traveled through several major streets in Dallas, including Main Street. It was one of the key thoroughfares of the city. City officials had made elaborate preparations for the visit. The streets were decorated and police patrolled along the route. The motorcade continued to move through the center of the city. About this time, it crossed the downtown streets of Dallas. The crowd grew larger, and traffic slowed as the president did not want to rush. Each time the crowd approached the limousine, security allowed people to get a little closer. At this point, it became obvious that the ride was going well. People cheered, and Kennedy responded with a genuine smile. However, not everything went according to plan that day. You could feel the tension in the air. The day before his arrival, anti-presidential leaflets had appeared in Dallas, and in the morning, newspapers published articles criticizing Kennedy's policies. But in the moment, as the motorcade moved slowly through the city streets, nothing portended trouble. The presidential car turned onto Houston Street and began traveling toward Dealey Plaza. The atmosphere continued to be festive. The crowd continued to greet the president, who was in high spirits. Next to him, Jacqueline also looked carefree, admiring the beauty of the city and chatting with people. However, this turn proved to be Kennedy's last. The motorcade drove past the Texas School Book Depository. It was on the north side of the plaza. At this time, Kennedy and his wife were sitting in the back seat of the limousine, along with the governor of Texas and his wife, Nellie. The first shot rang out. Many in the crowd and reporters at the scene didn't immediately realize what had happened. Confusion reigned for a while, and at first people thought it might have been some kind of noise, or car trouble. However, when the president grabbed his throat, it became obvious it was gunfire. A second shot wounded the Texas governor. The shooter punctured his chest and arm. The third shot was the last. The bullet went straight through Kennedy's head. His wife, sitting next to him, was in shock. At first, she tried to support her husband's head, but later, seeing the blood and the wound, she screamed in horror. Immediately after the third shot, the limousine driver, William Greer, accelerated sharply, heading for the local hospital. Secret Service agent Clint Hill jumped onto the back of the car to protect the president and First Lady. He tried to shield them with his own body until the car pulled over. At the same time, chaos broke out at the scene of the crime. The crowd couldn't believe what was happening. Many lay down on the ground, trying to take cover and figure out where the shots were coming from. The police responded immediately and began searching for the shooter. The evacuation was urgent, so the medics working at the scene provided first aid directly in the car while the limousine raced to the hospital. Upon arrival at the hospital, Kennedy was immediately taken to the operating room. Doctors began intensive resuscitation efforts in an attempt to save his life. Despite the doctors' best efforts, the president's condition was critical. He had suffered severe injuries, including serious head and neck trauma. The attempts proved unsuccessful, and the doctors pronounced him dead. It was decided to make an official statement. A group of doctors and government officials gathered at the hospital for this purpose. They stood in front of a crowd of journalists and officials. Dr. Malcolm Perry read the death certificate. He was one of the doctors who had performed resuscitation measures. Malcolm stepped out in front of the crowd and announced that the president was dead. For about an hour, police officers searched the surrounding area. Their attention was drawn to the school library building. After receiving information, the police conducted a thorough search. As a result, a rifle was found on the 6th floor of the building. It was an Italian-made carabiner rifle. The rifle had been left on a stand by the window. The shots had been fired from there. Cartridge cases were also found at the scene. On the same day, the police determined that the weapon belonged to Lee Harvey Oswald. Based on various pieces of evidence and witness statements, the investigating authorities began searching for the suspect. After a while, he was spotted in the suburbs of Dallas. Oswald tried to escape from the police and ran into the Texas Theater. Soon, the police arrived and tried to arrest him. However, Oswald did not want to surrender and resisted. As a result, he shot a police officer. The wound proved fatal for him. After the incident, the shooter was immediately arrested and taken to the police station. During interrogations and investigations, he was charged with the murder of the president and a police officer. On November 24, police officers escorted Oswald to a car to transfer him to prison. Suddenly, Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner, emerged from the crowd and shot Oswald. The bullet hit him directly in the stomach. He was later taken unconscious to a local hospital, where John Kennedy had died 2 days earlier. At 1:07 p.m. his heart stopped and Oswald died. Thus ended the story of the assassination of the 35th President of the United States. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like it and subscribe. See you soon.